Don't like my silly job, you don't get its silly perks. I work at one of those indoor trampoline parks where parents drop their kids off and pretend they don't exist for 2 hours. The job comes with some pretty sweet perks that nobody talks about. Free access to the trampolines after hours, employee discounts on birthday parties, and the best part, I get to eat leftover pizza from kids' parties that parents never bothered to pick up. Plus my coworkers are actually cool. We're all college kids or people between real jobs, so we just vibe and make the best of it. Enter Bryce, my new manager who got hired 3 months ago. This guy clearly thinks he's running some Fortune 500 company instead of watching kids bounce around on trampolines. First week on the job, he called a staff meeting to discuss professional development and brand image. I'm talking about a place where the main job requirement is knowing how to work a cash register and occasionally telling kids not to do backflips off the foam pit walls. Bryce started implementing all these new rules. No phones during shifts, even when it's dead empty on Tuesday afternoons. No talking to coworkers unless it's work-related. No eating the leftover party food because it looks unprofessional. And the worst part? He started scheduling mandatory team-building exercises on our days off. But what really set me off was when he started making comments about how my job wasn't real work and how I should be grateful for the opportunity to gain work experience in customer service. Dude literally said this while I was cleaning puke out of the foam pit because some kid ate too much cake before jumping around. Last week, he really crossed the line. I'd been working there for 8 months, longer than anyone except the assistant manager, Katie. This family came in for their kid's birthday party, and everything was going fine until their cake fell off the table. The mom was freaking out, the birthday kid was crying, and I felt bad for them. So I offered to comp their pizza order since we mess up food orders sometimes anyway and usually just eat the mistakes. It was like $20, no big deal. The family was super grateful, the kid cheered up, and everyone had a good time. Bryce pulled me aside later and goes, "Your silly little job here has rules, and you don't get to make executive decisions about comping food. This isn't a charity, it's a business." Then he wrote me up for exceeding authority and unprofessional decision-making. That's when I decided Bryce needed to learn exactly what my silly job actually entitled me to. See, here's the thing about working at places like this. You learn everyone's business whether you want to or not. Parents dump their kids here and then spend the whole time on phone calls discussing private stuff, thinking we're not paying attention. Bryce included. I'd overheard him on multiple calls with his girlfriend complaining about money, his car payments, and how he was only taking this management job temporarily until something better came along. He also mentioned several times how he was using the employee discount to throw his nephew's birthday party here next weekend, and how he was planning to hook himself up with free food and decorations. So when Bryce's nephew's party rolled around, I was working the front desk. Bryce spent the whole morning setting everything up, ordering way more food than the party package included, and loading up on decorations and party favors. When his sister showed up with the birthday kid, she tried to pay, and Bryce waved her off, saying it was all taken care of. That's when I printed out an itemized receipt for everything he'd taken. The party package, extra food, decorations, extended time in the private party room, extra party favors, all of it. Came out to around $300. I walked over with the biggest smile and handed it to his sister. "Hi, I just wanted to make sure you had your receipt for everything. Bryce ordered quite a bit extra for the party today." His sister looked confused and asked what the total was. When I told her, she looked at Bryce like he'd lost his mind. "You said this was going to cost like $50. Bryce's face went completely red. He tried to laugh it off and say there must be some mistake, but I just smiled and said, "Oh no, everything's correct. Bryce ordered all these extras and company policy says all food and decorations have to be paid for. Employee discount only applies to the basic party package," which was totally true, by the way. The employee discount he was planning to use was only 10% off the basic package, not a free-for-all on extras. His sister ended up paying for everything, but she was pissed at Bryce for misleading her about the cost.
My boyfriend would never tell me when he'd be home. He'd just show up randomly after work, after hanging with friends, after whatever he was doing. I'd ask him for a simple heads up so I could plan dinner or make sure I was home, but he'd always blow me off saying he didn't want to feel tied down or controlled. This went on for months. I'd cook dinner and it would go cold because he'd roll in 3 hours late. I'd make plans with friends but have to cancel last minute because he suddenly decided he wanted to spend time together. He'd promised to be home by 7 and stroll in at midnight smelling like beer and acting like nothing happened. I tried talking to him about it nicely. I explained that it wasn't about controlling him, it was just basic respect. But he'd get defensive and say I was being clingy or that his schedule was unpredictable. Meanwhile, I'm sitting at home like an idiot waiting around for someone who couldn't even send a simple text. The breaking point came on my birthday. He promised he'd be home early so we could go to dinner at this nice place I'd been wanting to try. I got all dressed up, did my hair, the whole thing. 6 o'clock came and went. 7, 8. I called and texted but got nothing back. Finally at 9:30 he texts me saying he's at some bar with his buddies and won't be home until late. No apology, no explanation, just a casual heads up like he hadn't completely ruined my birthday. I was furious. That's when I decided to give him a taste of his own medicine. If he wanted to play games with communication, I could play too. The next week when he asked what I was making for dinner, I said I wasn't sure yet. When he got home expecting food on the table, I was gone. I'd gone to eat with my sister and didn't get back until almost midnight. He was pissed, asking where I'd been and why I didn't tell him. I just shrugged and said my schedule was unpredictable. Then I started doing it more. I'd make plans without telling him. I'd stay out late and not respond to his texts. When he'd ask what I was doing that weekend, I'd be vague. If he wanted to hang out, I'd tell him maybe, but then make other plans. He started getting really frustrated, complaining that he never knew where I was or when I'd be home. The irony was completely lost on him. One night he actually had the nerve to say I was being inconsiderate for not keeping him in the loop about my plans. I laughed right in his face. I told him this was exactly what he'd been doing to me for months, that this was how it felt to never know when someone was coming home, to have plans ruined because of poor communication, to feel like you weren't important enough for a simple text. He tried to argue that it was different because he had work and guy time, but I shut that down real quick. I had work too, and friends too, and a life that didn't revolve around waiting for him to decide when he wanted to grace me with his presence. The whole thing came to a head 2 weeks later when he had some work event he wanted me to go to. It was important for his job apparently, apparently, and he really wanted me there. But instead of asking me nicely and giving me advance notice, he just assumed I'd drop everything and go. The morning of the event, he mentioned it casually while getting coffee, said we needed to leave at 6 and that I should dress nice. I looked at him like he was insane. I told him I already had plans and couldn't just cancel last minute. He completely flipped out, started yelling about how I was being petty and vindictive, how I was trying to sabotage his career. That's when I'd had enough. I told him he was absolutely right. I was being petty. But maybe now he understood how frustrating it was to be with someone who had zero consideration for your time. I broke up with him that night, told him I was done dating someone who thought basic communication was too much work. He tried to promise he'd change, said he finally got it and would be better about letting me know his schedule, but it was too late.
I told my parents I won't drive my brother to school unless he is more hygienic because his smell literally makes me sick. So my little brother Jake is 15 and I'm 17, and I've been driving him to school for the past 6 months since I got my license. At first it was actually kind of cool having the extra time to hang out with him in the car, but then around 3 weeks ago, something changed. I don't know if it's because he started playing more video games late at night or what, but Jake just stopped caring about basic hygiene, like completely stopped. I'm talking about not showering for days, wearing the same clothes over and over, and this musty smell that would just fill up my entire car the second he got in. The first time I really noticed it was on a Monday morning. I opened the passenger door for him and this wave of stench just hit me like a brick wall. It was like a mix of old sweat, dirty laundry, and something else I couldn't even identify. I actually had to step back and take a breath of fresh air before getting in my own car. I tried to be subtle about it at first. I'd roll down all the windows even when it was freezing outside, and I started keeping those little air fresheners in my car. But it didn't help. The smell would just stick to the fabric seats and linger there for hours after I dropped him off. By the second week, I was starting to feel nauseous during our drives, like actually sick to my stomach. I'd have to breathe through my mouth the entire time, and even then I could still taste this gross smell in the air. My friends started commenting on how my car smelled weird, which was embarrassing. I finally decided to talk to Jake about it directly. I waited until we were almost at school one morning and said something like, "Hey, you might want to shower more often, dude." But he just shrugged and said he had showered recently, which was obviously a lie because his hair was so greasy it looked wet. Things got worse when my girlfriend Emma asked if she could get a ride to school with us one day. I couldn't say no without explaining why, so I just hoped Jake would have cleaned himself up. But nope, Emma got in the back seat, and within like 30 seconds she was trying not to gag. She kept shooting me these looks like, "What is that smell?" And I was so mortified. After that, Emma started making excuses not to ride with us, and I knew she was telling her friends about it because they'd give me weird looks when I walked by. It was humiliating. The breaking point came last Thursday. I picked Jake up and the smell was so bad that I actually had to pull over after like 2 blocks because I thought I was going to throw up. I'm not exaggerating. I literally had my head out the window dry, heaving on the side of the road. Some lady jogging by asked if I was okay. That afternoon, I went straight to my parents. I found them in the kitchen and just laid it all out. I told them I wasn't driving Jake to school anymore unless he started showering regularly and washing his clothes. My mom immediately got defensive and said I was being dramatic, but my dad asked what exactly was going on. I explained everything. How the smell was making me physically sick, how it was affecting my friendships, how embarrassing it was. My mom kept insisting that Jake was just going through a phase and that teenage boys smell sometimes, but I told her this wasn't normal teenage boy smell. This was like he hadn't washed himself in weeks. Jake was upstairs playing games with his headset on, so he had no idea we were even talking about him. My dad went up to his room and came back down 5 minutes later with this look on his face like he'd seen something horrible. He just nodded at me and said, "Okay, I get it now." Turns out Jake's room smelled even worse than he did. My dad said there were dirty clothes everywhere, moldy food plates under his bed, and his sheets looked like they hadn't been changed in months. It was gross. My parents ended up having this huge intervention with Jake that night. They set up a shower schedule, made him do his own laundry twice a week, and said if he didn't follow it, he'd lose his gaming privileges. Jake threw a massive fit and said I was ruining his life, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. The next morning was the first time in weeks that I could actually breathe normally in my car during our drive to school. Jake was still mad at me and wouldn't talk, but at least he smelled like soap instead of a garbage dump. My mom later admitted that she hadn't realized how bad it had gotten because she was so used to it gradually getting worse. She thanked me for bringing it up, even though it was uncomfortable. Apparently Jake had been skipping showers after soccer practice too, which explained a lot. Now Jake keeps up with his hygiene way better, and our car rides are actually tolerable again.
What's the hilarious thing a kid said during their parents' custody hearing? I'm a court reporter, and last week I witnessed something that made Judge Martinez literally fall off his chair. The Andersons were in the middle of the nastiest custody battle I'd ever seen, fighting over their 11-year-old daughter Sophie. Mom, he fed her ice cream for dinner 17 times last month. Dad, she taught Sophie to forge my signature. Mom, he let her drive his Tesla. Dad, in the driveway, with parental controls, Judge Martinez rubbed his temples. I need to speak with Sophie. The door opens. Sophie walks in pulling a rolling suitcase, wearing a power suit and setting up a laptop. This 11-year-old brought a PowerPoint. Your Honor, before we begin, I'd like to submit my credentials. She hands him a folder. That's my honor roll certificate, my debate team trophy receipt, and a letter of recommendation from my therapist stating I'm more emotionally mature than both my parents combined. Judge Martinez's eyebrows shoot up. Your therapist wrote that? Page 2, highlighted in yellow. Sophie, why don't you tell me about... Actually, Your Honor, I've prepared a 47-slide presentation titled Evidence-Based Reasoning for Alternative Custody Arrangements. Shall I begin? The judge nods, speechless. Slide 1 appears, a photo of her dad. This is my father attempting to help with my math homework. He convinced me that 7 times 8 equals 54 for an entire semester. I failed 3 tests before my teacher called home. Slide 5. My mother's cooking experiments. This was supposed to be spaghetti. The photo shows something black and smoking. The fire department has our house on a watch list. They installed a direct hotline in our kitchen. Slide 12. Dad's idea of appropriate birthday entertainment. Video plays of him hiring a SWAT team to simulate a hostage rescue for her 10th birthday. 3 kids needed therapy. Mrs. Johnson still won't return our calls. Slide 18. Mom's boyfriend applications. Screenshots appear. She made a Tinder profile for me to help her screen dates. I'm 11 and I've rejected 73 men named Brad. Judge Martinez is gripping his desk. Slide 25. The incident. Sophie clicks. Both parents forgot to pick me up from camp for 3 days. The counselors thought I was an orphan. They started a GoFundMe. Sophie, the judge interrupts. Where would you prefer to live? She clicks to slide 30. A photo of a neat apartment. My Uncle Marcus. He's boring, responsible, and has never once forgotten I exist. Plus, he has a stable job, a 401k, and knows that children need vegetables. What about your parents? Slide 35. A detailed visitation schedule. I've created a structured plan. They can see me on weekends after completing court-mandated adulting classes. Adulting classes? Basic life skills, Your Honor. Like remembering your child exists, not using your daughter as a dating consultant, and understanding that Pop-Tarts aren't a food group. The judge calls the parents back. Mom protests. She's being dramatic. Sophie clicks to slide 40. Security footage from our Ring doorbell. Mom left me outside for 2 hours because she forgot I didn't have keys. It was snowing. Dad jumps in. That's nothing compared to slide 41. Dad setting up my Instagram when I was 6 to get more followers for his dog grooming business. I had 10,000 followers before I could spell follower. Judge Martinez stands up. I've heard enough. Sophie, your presentation is the most compelling legal argument I've seen in 20 years of family court, including from actual lawyers. Sophie clicks to her final slide. A photo of her with her Uncle Marcus at a science fair. He helped me build a volcano that didn't explode, didn't require medical attention, and actually won 3rd place. Custody granted to Uncle Marcus. Parents get supervised visitation after completing parenting classes and passing Sophie's final exam. I have a final exam? Sophie pulls out a stack of papers. 20 questions. Multiple choice. Question 1. Your child says they're hungry. Do you A, give them food, B, tell them to wait until tomorrow, C, forget they exist, or D, teach them to photosynthesize? Dad whispers, is D possible? Sophie looks at the judge. I rest my case. As we're leaving, Sophie shakes the judge's hand. Thank you, Your Honor. By the way, slide 47 has my college fund GoFundMe if you're interested. The judge laughs. You're going to run this country someday. Sophie grins. Already got a 5-year plan for that too. Her mom shouts, when did you make all this? During the 3 days you forgot me at camp. They had great Wi-Fi. My husband kept forgetting my birthday, so this year, I forgot him. For 3 years straight, Danny would act surprised when my birthday rolled around. First year, he said work was crazy and he'd make it up to me. Second year, he claimed his phone died, so he lost track of dates. Last year, he literally asked me why I seemed upset on February 15th, like he had no clue it was the day after my birthday. Meanwhile, this guy remembered every sports stat from 1995 and could tell you exactly when his favorite show aired each week. He had phone reminders for oil changes, dentist appointments, even when to water his plants. But somehow my birthday was this impossible thing to keep track of. My friends kept telling me to just remind him or send hints, but that felt pathetic. If someone cares about you, they remember what matters to you without being nagged about it. This year, I decided to test something. 2 weeks before my birthday, I started dropping hints everywhere. I left my birth certificate on the kitchen counter. I circled February 14th on the calendar with a big red heart. I even mentioned it during dinner. My birthday's coming up soon, I said while we ate tacos. He just nodded and kept scrolling his phone. The week before, I got more obvious. I showed him a dress online and said, this would be perfect for my birthday dinner next week. He mumbled something about it being nice and went back to watching TV. 3 days before, I literally said, so what are we doing for my birthday Thursday? He looked confused and asked, what's Thursday? When I told him it was my birthday, he slapped his forehead like he always did and said, right, yeah, I've been so busy with work stuff. Thursday morning came. I woke up expecting something, anything. Maybe flowers by my bedside or breakfast in bed. Nothing. He got dressed, kissed my cheek, and said he'd be back late because of a client dinner. Not even a happy birthday. I sat there in my pajamas until noon, feeling stupid for hoping things would be different this year. Then I remembered something. His birthday was exactly 1 month later, March 14th. And for the past 4 years, I'd thrown him surprise parties, bought expensive gifts, took days off work to plan special celebrations. That's when I made my decision. I spent my actual birthday doing something I'd never done before. I went shopping alone, bought myself the exact dress I'd shown him, got my nails done, and treated myself to dinner at this fancy Italian place downtown. The waiter even brought me free cake when I mentioned it was my birthday. For the next month, every time Danny mentioned his upcoming birthday, I played dumb. When he showed me golf clubs online and said, these would be perfect for my birthday, I just said, cool, and kept folding laundry. When he asked what restaurant we should book for his birthday dinner, I told him I hadn't really thought about it. When he mentioned taking the day off work to celebrate, I said that sounded nice and changed the subject. March 14th arrived. I woke up early, got dressed for work like any normal day, and started making coffee. Danny came downstairs in his favorite shirt, clearly expecting something special. Morning, I said, not looking up from my phone. It's my birthday, he said, waiting for my reaction. I looked up, pretended to think for a second, then snapped my fingers. Oh yeah, happy birthday, babe. Have a good day at work. His face went through about 5 different emotions. Confusion, hurt, anger, then this weird panic. That's it? You're not taking the day off? We don't have dinner plans? I shrugged, grabbing my keys. I've been super busy with work stuff lately. Haven't really had time to plan anything. When I got home that night, he was sitting at the kitchen table looking defeated. You really forgot my birthday, he said quietly. I didn't forget, I replied. I just figured if birthdays aren't important enough to remember without reminders, then maybe we shouldn't make such a big deal about them. The realization hit him like a truck. His mouth opened and closed a few times before he finally said, this is about your birthday, isn't it? What about my birthday? I asked innocently. He put his head in his hands. I've been a complete idiot. Yeah, I said. You have been. The next morning, I woke up to rose petals leading from our bedroom to the kitchen, where he'd made my favorite breakfast and had a jewelry box sitting next to my coffee. Inside was a necklace that looked exactly like my mom's missing one. I know I can't undo the past 3 years, he said, but I swear I will never forget again.